Okay, so tech interviews, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially those algorithm-heavy ones at like Google and Amazon.
Yeah.
Pretty daunting, to be honest. You spend weeks, months even, like grinding leak code and trying to memorize all those crazy sorting algorithms. And then, boom, you're in the hot seat, whiteboard coding test, pressure's on.
Makes you sweat.
It does. But what if I told you there's like a whole debate going on right now about whether all that algorithm stuff is actually the best way to find the best tech people?
It's a good question.
So that's what we're going to kind of dig into today. We're looking at this article called Why Algorithms Are Overemphasized in Tech Interviews. Came out November 3rd this year on a website that helps people land, programming jobs.
Interesting.
Yeah, so the thing is, like, for years, people have said that these crazy algorithm tests are, like, the way to figure out who's good at tech. But is that really true?
I mean, it's been the standard for so long.
Right, exactly. And this article is like, hold on a second, there might be some downsides.
There are always alternative ways of looking at things.
Totally. Before we get into, like, the criticisms and stuff, maybe let's paint a picture.
Sure.
So imagine you're applying for, like, a software engineer job at one of the, big tech companies.
Okay.
What's that process even look like?
It's a gauntlet.
It is. So usually you've got your phone screen, just like a quick chat about your background, right?
Right.
Then, oh boy, the online coding challenge.
Yeah.
Ticking clock.
Stressful.
If you survive that, then it's the on-site.
Whiteboard coding.
Whiteboard coding, system design discussions, and of course, those behavioral questions like, tell me about a time when, to make sure you're, a real person.
You work with others, right?
Exactly. Okay, so let's hear, like, what do the people who love these algorithm interviews say? What are their arguments?
Okay, so their main point is algorithms, they level the playing field.
Okay.
Objective. Efficient.
Gotcha.
Test your core coding knowledge.
So the logic is, if you can solve these, like, super tricky problems, you're probably a good problem solver in general.
And adaptable to new stuff.
Makes sense, sort of. It's like those standardized tests, in school.
It is. It's very similar to that, actually. You've got your SATs, your ACTs.
Do those really tell you the whole story?
Well, that's exactly where the article comes in.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, standardized tests, they have their pros.
They have their cons.
Huge cons. And that's what this article is critiquing. They're saying, look, there are 5 big pitfalls when you overemphasize algorithms in interviews, and some of them you might not expect.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Hit me with pitfall number 1.
Number 1, real-world relevance.
Okay.
Or lack thereof. The article is basically saying most developers, they don't spend their days, sorting algorithms from scratch.
No, right?
Like, how often are you actually going to need to implement, like, a binary tree traversal in your day-to-day job?
Not very often.
Most devs are building systems, maintaining code, working with teams, debugging.
Understanding the actual, like, business needs.
Exactly.
So if you're amazing at these whiteboard algorithm problems, does that really translate to, being a rock star developer in the real world?
That's the question.
Big question.
It is a big question. It's a big question. So what are the alternatives?
Right. Because this article, thankfully, doesn't just, like, complain,
It's not just branding.
It offers solutions, right?
Yeah,
What can we do differently?
Exactly.
Okay, so the first one they talk about is take-home projects.
I like this one.
I love this. Instead of, like, torturing people with, weird theoretical algorithms, give them a project, like something they'd actually do on the job.
Yeah, much more realistic.
Way more realistic, right. Let's say you're hiring, I don't know, a web developer.
Okay.
Instead of making them, like, reverse a linked list on a whiteboard.
Right.
You say, hey, build me a tiny web app. It needs to do X, Y, and Z.
You get to see their process.
Totally. You see how they code. Do they write clean code? Can someone else understand it?
How do they manage their time?
Time management, all that stuff you actually care about.
Can they actually deliver?
Deliver a real thing, not just, solve a puzzle.
It's much more practical.
Okay, next idea. Pair programming.
Ooh, this is a good one.
I'm so into this because, it takes the pressure off a little bit.
It's less like an interrogation.
It's collaborative, which, by the way, is how we actually work. Right?
You're always working with other people in this field.
So the article suggests, like, maybe the candidate pairs with the interviewer.
Okay.
And they work together on, like, adding a feature to an existing code base or something.
You get to see how they interact.
Exactly. How do they talk through problems? Do they listen to feedback? Are they, team players?
Do they get defensive?
Plus, the candidate gets to see the company culture a bit, which is good for them, too.
Right? It's a two-way street.
Okay, this next one is near and dear to your heart, I know.
Oh, yes. System design discussions.
So this is often part of interviews already, but the article is like, pump up the volume.
Especially if you're hiring people to build, like, massive systems.
Makes sense. You want to know if they can handle the big picture stuff.
Architecture, scalability, all that.
So not just, can you sort this array, but can you design a system that won't crash when 1 million people use it at once?
Exactly. The article even gives an example, like designing a distributed caching system.
Woof. It's getting a little technical for me, but I get the point.
It's complex. It forces you to think about trade-offs, make design choices, justify them.
This real-world stuff.
Real problems engineers solve every day.
Okay, another one I thought was interesting, code review exercises.
Haven't seen those too often.
Me neither.
Yeah.
So basically, they give you some existing code, right?
Uh-huh.
And you have to act like you're reviewing a teammate's work.
Looking for bugs, potential issues, style inconsistencies.
Right. Are they following best practices? Do they even know best practices?
It's a good way to assess their attention to detail.
Yeah, and can they give constructive feedback? Because no one likes a jerk, even if they're a genius coder.
Right. Being able to communicate clearly and helpfully is huge.
Huge. Okay, and of course we can't forget the kind of classics, the behavioral and situational questions.
Those.
They might seem like less technical,
Yeah.
but they tell you a lot about a person.
Their soft skills, how they handle things.
The article gave an example. They said, like, ask the candidate, tell me about a time you worked on a project where there were, like, conflicting requirements.
Oh, I've gotten that one.
It's a classic, and it tells you, like, can they handle conflict? Can they communicate?
Can they compromise?
Exactly. Because even if someone is, like, the coding god,
Right.
if they can't work with others, they're going to be a nightmare.
A liability.
Totally. So the article is saying, hey, there are all these other ways to judge tech talent, not just algorithms.
Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Hey. So my question is, how do companies actually make these changes? Like, what are some, I don't know, concrete steps they could take?
It's a big shift for a lot of companies, yeah.
It is, right. Like, they've built this whole system around algorithms.
But the article has some really good advice, actually, like concrete things you can do.
Okay, lay it on me.
First thing, tailor the interview to the actual job.
Oh, duh, right? Like, obviously, a front-end developer needs different skills than, I don't know, a data scientist or...
Exactly. If you're hiring someone to build user interfaces,
Yeah.
you should probably, like, test their JavaScript skills.
See if they understand, like, UX principles, design stuff.
Right. Can they make a website that looks good and works well on a phone?
Whereas, like, a DevOps engineer, you'd want to know about infrastructure and
Automation.
automation. Yeah, cloud computing, all that.
So match the interview to the job, basically.
Don't just use the same test for everyone.
Exactly.
Okay, good advice.
Well, they also say use a bunch of different methods.
Mix it up.
Mix it up. So instead of just algorithms, maybe you start with a take-home project.
Oh, yeah, we talked about that.
See how they code on their own. Then you do some pair programming.
See if they can collaborate.
Exactly. And if the job needs, like, system design skills, you add that in, too.
It's like a multi-pronged attack.
It is. And it's more interesting for the candidate, too.
Yeah, no one wants to just sit there and do algorithm problems for 3 hours straight.
It's grueling.
It is. Okay, and even when you use those algorithm challenges,
Yeah.
the article says don't just focus on the answer.
Right.
Like, did they get the right answer? Who cares? Sort of.
Focus on how they got there.
They're thinking.
Ask them to talk through it. What are they considering? How do they make decisions?
You want to see, like, their problem-solving skills in action.
Exactly.
Okay, this next one I love. Make the interview less scary.
Yes. It shouldn't be an interrogation.
Right. So no more coding on a blank whiteboard, just you and a marker and a panel of, like, judging eyes.
Give them tools.
Yeah.
Let them use their normal setup, their IDE,
I
whatever.
don't know if they have in a real job.
Exactly. Let them look up documentation, Google things if they need to.
It makes it more realistic, less pressure.
And you get a better sense of how they'd actually work.
Love it. Okay, last thing, evaluating the process itself.
Oh, this is key.
Right, because you can't just, like, set it up and forget about it.
You got to keep checking in. Get feedback, both
Yeah.
from the candidates and the interviewers.
See what's working, what's not.
Right. And you should, like, track how the people you hire actually do on the job.
See if your fancy interview process is actually predicting success.
Exactly. It should be an ongoing thing, always tweaking, always improving.
Okay, so that's all about companies. But what about like the people applying for jobs? Where do these platforms, like Algo Academy, where do they fit in? Because this article is saying algorithms aren't everything.
Right, but Algo Academy is still super valuable.
Oh, why?
Well, first of all, they teach you those algorithm and problem-solving skills.
Which, okay, maybe not every interview is going to grill you on them,
True.
but they're still important, right?
They're fundamental. They help you think like a programmer, solve all kinds of problems, not just the specific ones they show you on the site.
So it's good brain training, even if you never get asked about a binary tree again.
Exactly.
Mm.
And look, let's be real. Some companies are still going to ask those algorithm questions.
So it's good to be prepared.
Exactly. Algo Academy can help you ace those interviews.
Makes sense.
Plus, they're great for, like, continuous learning.
Oh, yeah, right. It's not just for, like, new grads prepping for interviews.
You can use it throughout your career to
Yeah.
brush up on things, learn new stuff, even prepare for, like, more senior roles.
It's like professional development for developers.
That's a great way to put it.
And as technology changes, these platforms can change too, right?
Absolutely. They can add content on system design or, like you said, the hot new thing like machine learning or blockchain,
They can keep up with the times.
and help developers do the same.
So even if algorithms aren't the only thing companies care about anymore, they're still a good thing to know.
Definitely. And Algo Academy is a great place to learn them, among other things.
Awesome. Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. We talk about why maybe we're obsessed with algorithms a little too much.
Mhm.
We looked at some cool alternative ways to find great tech talent.
Doesn't have to be so scary.
And we even talked about how these learning platforms can adapt and stay relevant.
It's an exciting time to be in tech, even with all the, interview anxieties.
It is. So if you want to dig deeper into this whole algorithm thing, definitely check out the article, Why Algorithms Are Overemphasized in Tech Interviews. It came out November 3rd this year on Site Name.
It's a good read.
And if you're out there applying for jobs, good luck. You've got this. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive.
It's been fun.
Until next time.